Good afternoon. We're here at the 2nd Street Market, and I am here to show you how to make a centerpiece from elements in your own yard. So my name is Wendy, and we have a flower farm called Consider the Lilies, and we have sold here at the 2nd Street Market for several years. We actually started out with wreaths, and then we also, later on in 2011, we started growing our own flowers to make fresh flower arrangements. So we know a lot of you that are watching, and we appreciate your business. We've actually had a great year. We have did a lot of online sales. We have our New Carlisle Flower Farm. We do pickups there. We have did pickups at 2nd Street Market and also pickups at St. Anne the Tart. And we've delivered and shipped. So we have lots of great options to get wreaths and flowers to you. Currently, we're selling flower subscriptions for 2021. We are already growing for 2021. And we've got flowers starting to bloom in our greenhouses. So we should be able to start delivering flowers and having flower pickups hopefully by the end of March, first part of April. But for now, we are making fresh wreaths for the holidays. We do arrangements, garlands, and the greens that we have here today are smelling absolutely delicious. One of my favorite candle scents is fresh pine, and I'm like smelling that fresh pine right now, and it smells absolutely amazing. So anyways, that's a little bit about what we do, and then we will talk about how to do an arrangement. So I'm going to show you some of the supplies you're going to need to make an arrangement like this. You're first going to obviously need some good heavy-duty clippers. These are Felcos. I absolutely love them. You can order them online. A lot of people have hand pruners at their place. You want to have something that's going to be able to cut some of these branches. Very important to have some good ones. Otherwise, you're going to have some really sore wrists and hands. Chicken wire. So this is what I'm going to be using in the arrangement. I just cut off a piece of a roll that I have a little bit bigger than the base of your container. That way you can kind of scrunch it in. You can go buy chicken wire like at Hobby Lobby or something. They have just some small rolls of it, so you don't have to buy anything too big. I'm going to be using these wooden skewers, and that's to help secure my pine cones. I'll show you how to do that later, but just something like this. A lot of times we'll have some kind of skewers in our kitchen for baking. And then this is a bind wire that I'm going to use to attach the pine cones as well. This is something that you can usually get at some kind of a like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something like that. You can use a traditional paddle wire as well. I like this really well because it looks natural, so it blends in with the other elements. And then of course your container, whatever you choose to decide on kind of depending where you're going to place it. And that is all you need. Okay, so I'm going to put my gloves on. I like to use rubber gloves. You can use those when you're cutting your greenery. You'll especially want to use them when you're cutting your pieces for your arrangement, because there is a lot of sap that comes out, especially in some of the pine. So I'm going to show you first some of the things that I brought here today that we're going to use. These branches here are white pine. I like to use them for more of the airy look in the arrangement. We have some fresh juniper here. There's lots of different types of juniper you can use. This one kind of has a little bit of gold seeds on it. This is an arborvitae. I cut some oak leaf hydrangea leaves, which are kind of fun for a different element. We have some berry types here. These don't have lots of berries on them, but they're going to add a little bit of uniqueness to our arrangement. So when you're out gathering greens in your yard, you want to cut fairly good sized pieces, because the last thing you want to do is you get inside, it's all cold, and your pieces are too short for your arrangement. So cut some pretty big branches. Obviously you want to think about how you're trimming your things up so it doesn't look too bad. But all the greens that we selected are pretty hardy. The white pine, if you are to cut that and you lay it like say on your mantle, it's going to dry out and shed really bad. I don't necessarily recommend it for that. These other greens will do fine. But like I said, white pine in an arrangement with water works really good. Now we're going to move on to our containers. And this container that I selected is just kind of, you can keep it really low. I'm going to make it a little bit taller, but if you were going to set it on like a centerpiece for a table where people are going to be gathering around and you want to see over the top of the arrangement, I would recommend something a little lower. That way when you get your greens, it's not towering over and you have to end up moving it because you can't see anybody. But this is one that's just a really good overall size to work with. It has a pretty wide opening that you can work with. And if you wanted to select maybe say a taller vase that you want to set on a side table or a buffet or something, you would typically do more of a taller arrangement in that. But I will show you how we would get started with using a container like this. So I have cleaned it. You want to make sure your containers are always very clean because you're going to get bacteria in your water once you put your stems in. And I'm using a piece of chicken wire that I cut. And what I do is I just kind of crunch it up and put it inside. I kind of try to fit it right down inside the container. And then when I feed my greenery through, it like secures them in place. And if I chose not to use a chicken wire, basically you would want to use lots of stiff greenery as your base to keep your pieces from not sliding around. So I got my chicken wire in there just kind of like that. And then I'm going to pour my fresh clean water in here. And if you have some preservative or something and you want to put it in your water, you're welcome to. The biggest thing you want to do in order to keep your arrangement fresh for a long period of time is make sure your water stays fresh in here. So one of the things you can do is just kind of lightly tip it out to dump it out. You're not going to probably be able to remove all the water, but just continually refresh it with clean water. So I've got it filled up here about 3/4 full. You don't want to fill it clear to the top, but neither do you want to leave it too low on the water level because your greens will drink up quite a bit. So the first thing we're going to start with is I usually take my more bushier type greens. When we're using greenery, we're going to do that. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to strip off your lower pieces so you just have a branch. Now this piece is a little bit on the short side, but I'm going to do some shorter pieces just to kind of start with my base. And then I'm just going to kind of circle around with some of this juniper here. I'm kind of selecting the tips right now, and then if I need to fill in, I can use the lower pieces. But you want to make sure you strip off these because they will not go into your arrangement very well. The little lower pieces will get caught on things. And it's a good idea to just kind of circle your container around as you make your arrangement, especially if you're making a arrangement like this that could go on a centerpiece. If you're doing one just on a table where it's going to be one-sided, you can just kind of arrange it to one side. So I enjoy doing probably more what you would call a wild style of arranging, loose and airy. Some people would call my style boho. This isn't necessarily a boho arrangement per se as far as what we're using, but it might be more of a boho style. So I'm not going to completely fill it up. I'm just going to do about this many pieces right now. And then I'm going to use some of the white pine. The white pine is going to give it the loose, airy look. It's also going to give it some height. And when you're adding height to your arrangement, you want to just kind of hold it up to your container to kind of see how you want it to stick out. So I'm going to put quite a bit of height in this. Like I said, I maybe wouldn't want to use this like necessarily where I'm going to be around a dining room table and having people gather around it, but it can be your centerpiece that you can, you know, keep around your table or like in a kitchen, something like that. So there again, I'm kind of using these tips again. So I kind of want to have height going off to the other side here. So I'm thinking this one's a little bit tall. So you can always pull them right back out. It's one nice thing about doing it in chicken wire versus Oasis foam. Oasis foam is something that we used to do a lot. Once you pull it out of Oasis foam, it's not real easy to go back in because you've already made a hole there. So this will go right back in, and I like that a little bit more. And so I kind of got 2 wings going off. I'm going to do one more. And honestly, this is a work of art. You don't have to do it just the way I'm doing it here. You can kind of do it how you want, your own style. Some people like to do sort of a tight, rounded arrangement. That's totally fine. It's up to you. So sometimes you'll put it in and it doesn't feel very secure, so you just move it around a little bit. So I'm going to do one more piece here, a little bit shorter. Okay, so this is kind of taking our shape how we want it, and then we're going to fill in with a little more color and elements and that sort of thing. Now I'm going to choose my arborvitae. This is a little more of a soft greenery, a little more fluffy, but it's also kind of compacted together. You can use arborvitae, you could use boxwood. It's just really neat to have some different textures of greenery, even though this is all green. Like my juniper here, you probably can't see it, but close up, it has kind of like gold, I don't know, you call them like gold seeds. There's different types of juniper out there. And this is actually, the juniper that I have is actually wild out in our field where our flower farm is. So I'm just gonna fill in and continue to circle my arrangement around. Kind of continue on with the same, just like removing the lower stems, makes them go in really smooth. And every time you make a cut, it smells amazing. I don't know if it's necessarily the oils or what it is, probably some of the sap that comes out gives that scent as you're making cuts. In fact, if you have an herb garden and your herbs haven't froze yet, you could always add some herbs in this arrangement. We use herbs a lot in our flower arrangements, and we even use them some in our wreaths, especially fresh rosemary. It smells amazing and looks really pretty. Okay, so I added my arborvitae, and then I'm going to start with more, I don't have a lot of super colorful things, but they have different textures, and I actually decided to grab this because they were in a protected area. They haven't froze yet, and it's an oak leaf hydrangea. I really like the leaves on them. They just look a little bit unique. I'm going to cut them a little bit shorter, and so they're going to go kind of way close into the arrangement. They're going to kind of be more along the base, but they just add something a little bit more unique. There's a lot of different things you can use here. This is definitely a natural arrangement. If you wanted, you could actually get creative and say spray paint hydrangeas that have turned brown in your yard. Actually, like a gold paint is really pretty right on the hydrangeas or pine cones. If you want more of a glitzy arrangement on your table, which could be really pretty as well. So this still has a little bit of a hydrangea on it. I'm going to go ahead and leave it in there. Okay, so that just adds just a little bit of more textures than anything else. And then I'm going to use, these are not really full with berries, but they have a little bit, and they're going to add just kind of a different type of element to, it's going to give some height to the arrangement. And you can use even just like regular branches if you wanted to give some height. I just think that makes the arrangement look really cool. If you have like a tall vase you're using, you may just want to make an arrangement that's a little higher, just going straight up like that. So I'm going to continue to cut these. These are not prickly. But I do know, like, some people may have like winterberry or something like that. That is absolutely gorgeous. I don't have any. Where we live, we are a little colder than the Dayton area, so we can't grow some of the berries that maybe some of you can. If you have access to berries in your yard, absolutely cut them. They're very pretty. Of course, if they are poisonous, you don't want to bring those in. You might want to check on that if you don't know whether or not they are poisonous. So I'm going to add, I think, just a couple more of these. I'm not a horticulturist, so I don't always know the types of all of the bushes I have. These have been in my yard for at least 20 years. I want to say they're barberry, but I'm not positive on that. I'm sure some of you know exactly what it is, and they do kind of have a red berry. They get like a red color foliage during the summer. So anyways, I'm just kind of looking at it here. I think maybe like one more sticking out in the front, and then I'm going to add my pine cones. So I'll show you how to attach the pine cones in your arrangement. So to wire your pine cones, I've got two different sizes of pine cones here. These long ones I like for an arrangement because you can kind of stick them in and they'll stick out, where something like this is going to get more or less lost in your arrangement. And so I'm going to actually use these longer ones. And you literally could nestle them right down into your arrangement and they would probably stick. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to show you how you can wire them. So we're going to use this bind wire. And I'm just going to cut a fairly long strip. And then I'm going to thread it through my pine cone. And I actually use this when we wire them on a wreath or something. You can see you can twist it right onto something. I'm going to use this wooden skewer here, and I'm going to twist it to that. And then I'm going to cut it a little bit because I don't need it quite that long. And then just kind of like the stem, you want to see, forgot to snip this off. Don't want that long trail hanging out. And that just kind of puts it in place right where you want it. It's not going to pop out, fall out, and it's still sticking out of the arrangement. Okay, so I'm going to continue to push these in. Got them all wired, and I'm using 5 pine cones. When I do a flower arrangement, I like to always do like an odd number. So this is why I chose to do 5. So I'm just going to continue to circle it around like we did. Once you put it in place, you can push that skewer down all the way to the end. To the bottom, so it's not sticking out towards the top. But using these wooden skewers, they kind of blend in with the arrangement anyway. They're kind of a natural color. So anyways, I got my pine cones in, and the last thing I'm going to add to this is some rose hips. So these rose hips, the leaves look really bad. I'm going to go ahead and strip them off. They are from knockout roses. But if you have traditional roses, there's even some different varieties of knockout roses that have bigger rose hips on them. They're really pretty. Now, you want to be cautious when you're cutting these because I know mine are really thorny. So I'm picking off the thorns right now. Plus, your thorns can snag when you put them in. So I'm going to remove them. And mine are not super full of berries. They're still pretty. They're going to add just a little bit of pop of color. This one is nice and long. A lot of mine were a little bit on the short side. The one thing about it is if they don't reach the water, it's not going to be super critical. The worst thing they're going to do is dehydrate a little bit, and they might shrivel just slightly, but they're not going to just flop and die or anything like that. It's not like flowers where they need to be in water. I'm just kind of cutting off some of these dead pieces that don't have a lot of berries, and I'm just going to kind of pop them in. And like I said, a lot of these are a little bit on the short side, so they're not going to go all the way into that water, but they're just going to be a little bit of red to stick out. And there again, if you have access to holly, or there's lots of different types of berries around here. I know there's like a purple berry that's really pretty. It's really fun. If you have a lot of stuff in your backyard, you might be surprised as you walk around what all you might be able to use. That's kind of how it was for me. I had fun just seeing what all I actually did have this time of year. As we look out, sometimes we don't see it until we get out a little bit closer to it. So I've got one more I'm going to tuck in, just kind of seeing where I need a little bit more color here. And one thing you could do, like I had said earlier, some of us have hydrangeas. We have a lot at our place, and I chose not to put them in this arrangement. They're kind of a brown color right now, but if you wanted to spray paint them, like I said, it is really pretty spray painted gold, and you could stick them in. They'll blend with like these brown natural colors. But this is just what you call a natural arrangement that you can use from your own backyard clippings. And if you do not have access to greenery, pine cones, any type of elements in your backyard, that is one thing that we will sell: mixed green bunches. We can sell pine cones, we can sell berries to you, and you can order those online. You can always just send us a message if you don't see exactly what you want. We're glad to help you, and you can get yourself a bundle and you can take it home and make something like this yourself. So this is what you call a natural winterscape arrangement, and you can keep this at least 3 weeks, but closer to a month, as long as you keep watering it. You want to check the water level. You can stick your finger down in it, and if you can't fill the water, just like put in just a little bit. Make sure that all these, especially your white pine, that's going to dry out the quickest. You want to make sure that they are well hydrated at the bottom of their stems, and you can enjoy it for a long time.